Guys, the 90s kind of sucked. The 90s were like the worst decade in terms of like cultural product. Why do people hate their guys? First of all, the 90s was like the absolute apex. It was right in between Reagan and 9/11 of like hyper arrogant West neoliberalism, where the media never covered any of the suffering in the world. The world continued to burn, labor continued to be exploited, but no one covered it. The culture was completely disconnected from the material concerns of the world. All of the fashion and all of the aesthetics from the 90s, by the way, in the garbage bin of history. What have we seen? 60s revivals, 80s revivals, 70s revivals. Have we seen a 90s revival? Only ironically, you see 90s revivalism being done in a kind of like like pastiche, like tongue-in-cheek, haha, look at how goofy we looked. Give it 20 more years. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to, nope. I don't think it's going to, nope, 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 nope. I don't think it's going to happen. Nope, nope, nope. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think, when I think 90s, I think Taco Bell, like grimy Taco Bell, like moon and geometric shape carpeting, and I think shopping malls. But the thing is, the bad parts of the 90s aren't even something that we like romanticize and aestheticize sincerely anymore. We romanticize their death. That's why Vaporwave is currently popular, because Vaporwave is literally like a musical and aesthetic takedown of the consumerist tendencies of the 90s. The shopping malls and like all of the you literally played N64 games. Guys, I'm not literally saying zero good culture was produced in the 90s. I'm saying that the decade as it's represented isn't going to have the same kind of revival. The main problem with the 1990s is that, like, the aesthetic of the era isn't in any way tied to, like, a countercultural element, you know? At least if we go back to 1980, like, the 80s or whatever, I don't, what do you want, David Bowie, like, Michael Jackson or whatever? But when people think of 90s, grunge? So what, Nirvana? That's it? That's what, just Nirvana? That's what you have? What about Rage? You can't build a decade revival off of a couple of good bands here. The decade itself was fundamentally like countercultural. It was about suppressing the. What about rap? Rap is still number one. Oh, by the way, they lost. All of the actual like authentic started from the bottom, now we hear shit about rap has since been completely supplanted by hyper consumerist, like the entire genre is so different from what it was. Big Wrong, you are so fucking delusional. Oh my god. How can you possibly think that? Rap is so different now from how it was back in the 1990s. I don't know anything, and even I know that. No, guys, the 90s are just different. They're just bad. It's okay. They had good stuff in them. I'm not attacking all the stuff in the 90s. I'm just saying that when we think of the decade, the main cultural products of the 1990s have either been corrupted or a satirical take on what we had in the 90s. But there are non-satirical adoptions of aesthetics from before. The 80s, 60s, and 70s all have elements of their decade's respective, I don't know, cultural block, attitude, that have been repopularized in a sincere fashion with an express appreciation for what they had. But it's harder to do with the 90s. I guess you could do some kind of like grunge I don't know. When you have those like big nostalgia hits, where when you have those big nostalgia hits where that you do like the decade comes back into flavor. It's not really the music that gets made again, right? It's more the aesthetic gets redone and the music comments on, because you can't just make music that's like 30 or 40 years old. Nobody would buy it, right? Like it wasn't like when there was 1960s nostalgia, people just started like making Jimi Hendrix songs again. Like it's not, you don't copy it. There's like, it's like a reflection. But all the reflections of the 90s are so cynical, you know? I don't know. Okay, wait, I'm moderating my take a little bit here. Maybe I think that 90s revivalism, 90s revivalism, I feel like it's going to be a way more cynical. right? Like I don't think it's going to be like an earnest appreciation of the decade or like a nostalgic reflection on what we had. I think it's going to be more of like a like I don't know, a mourning of the last decade we had before 9/11. Like, look at how arrogant we were to think things could have been like this forever. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'll walk away with that one, I think. You mean vaporwave? Yeah, but I said that. I said that about vaporwave. Yeah. But vaporwave is a critique on. It's like an attack on that. I did say that. I said what you're saying. There's even Soviet wave. Yeah, well, you know. Not enough Smashing Pumpkins love here. I think I've heard like 5 songs from them, and I remember them sounding nice. By the way, I'm not saying that there's no 90s revivalism in like other genres because there's a ton of it in video gaming, you know? I'm not saying that's not a thing. I'm just like I'm saying the broader decade, like a broader trend, broader trend, broader trend. Um have I seen Inuyasha? I've seen some of it. You're somewhat wrong, Vaush. The aesthetics of the 90s are culturally significant, especially the early internet, Napster, Kazaa, ICQ, etc. Um okay. Well, wait, hold on. I guess that counts. The 90s gave us Cowboy Bebop. Revivalism of a decade is not just listing everything good that you think of that decade and people liking it. There's been good stuff that has come out of literally every decade that has ever happened. You can't just erase. It's not like, oh, the 90s are the great revivalism. Of course, obviously, that means that nothing good possibly would have produced. It's not about every single thing that came out of that decade. It's about the broader attitudes of the fucking time, okay? Stop. Yes, Cowboy Bebop is good. You know what a good game is? Hyperspace Outlaw. I think that would actually be a great. What would aught revivalism even look like? Scene girls, bring them fucking mid-20s college-age girls, ironically, with the fucking raccoon stripes and overdone face makeup, doing RAR XDs. Absolutely, I didn't nearly enough scene girls when I was in high school. I need to make up the time. Get that aughts revivalism back in full swing. It's time. It's time. Bring it in. The 90s was crazy homophobic. Yeah, and so am I. The scene trend happened already. That's what revivalism is. You bring it back. So rap was good in the 90s? Ask a aficionado. I don't know anything about anything. For any of you who haven't seen, by the way, Hypnospace Outlaw is a really, really, really good game. Basically, you're like a forum moderator. Circa like 1993. Uh it's difficult to even describe. It's here. You basically have to search through this like really confusing and poorly designed social media interface to like look over all these different groups and the people in them who are all aggressively like early to mid 90s, and you have to see if anyone's doing anything bad, and then you report them, and there's a broader story. It's very good. It's very odd. It's a detective game. You have to do some big brain stuff to figure it out. Is this being done ironically? I can't tell. If this is ironic, then it's a perfect. I think this is modern. I think this has to be modern. It's too on the nose, but it's like a perfect representation. Yeah, it's ironically unironic. How do they make it look like it was drawn in 90s paint, though? Oh, it's easy to replicate that, if you know what you're doing. But Vaush, what about Japanese war crimes? I need to get a poster on the front wall of my studio that that just says like "Remember Manchuria" in big bold letters, so that no matter what anime bullshit we talk about on stream, I always remember the war crimes.